Nazdar bombaři, máme tady speciál bomb v NHL a speciál s velkým hostem, protože když vrchní krab se rozhodl udělat brankářský speciál s Romanem Malkem, tak jsem si řekl, že my to nemůžeme v NHL, že ho nechat jen tak a myslet si, že jako vrchní krab je s Romanem Malkem jako OK při brankářském speciálu. Takže já jsem vytáhl jako do svýho košíčku velké brankářské jméno Martinem Bironem, nebo Martinem Bironem, pokud to chcete francouzsky, 531 zápasů v NHL. Hráč, který dělal backupa nejenom Dominiku Haškovi, Ryanu Millerovi, ale také třeba Henriku Lundqvistovi a zároveň byl velkou součástí Philadelphia Flyers při počátku těch úspěchů. Takže to je náš Martin Biron, společně se mnou je tady samozřejmě Honza Eichler. Ahoj Honzo.
Ahoj.
A ještě rychle poděkujeme našim partnerům, kterými jsou Tipsport, česká sázková kancelář, a na Tipsportu můžete sledovat třeba výsledky Buffalo, kterého Martin dělá analystu a také samozřejmě Komerční banka, což je banka českého hokeje. And now we are going to switch to English. So Martin, thank you so much for having time for us and joining us. Do you prefer being called Marty Biron or Martin Biron in a French way?
It's being in Buffalo in Western New York for almost 30 years now. It's always been Marty, right? So I think I followed Marty Brodeur because nobody called him Martin Brodeur. They called him Marty Brodeur. So for me, it was the same thing. So that works for me.
Marty, I will start with just, basic question. Who is the number one goalie right now in the NHL?
Right now in the NHL, it's Connor Hellebuyck. And look, Connor Hellebuyck was probably the best goalie in the regular season last season as well. He's different. He plays a different game than everybody else. Shesterkin is athletic. Vasilevsky is athletic. Jake Ottinger is athletic. Like they all very, they move well. But Connor Hellebuyck is very, very, very conservative in the way that he plays. He's very boxy. Reminds me a lot of Jean-Sébastien Giguère when Giguère was playing with the Anaheim Ducks. And it was just like good angles, good positioning, and let the puck hit you. Now, he can be athletic too, but he's very different than everybody else. And I think he's the best right now.
Well, we are actually going to talk about a lot of the names that you've mentioned. I do have one follow-up question just to kick the party off. Who is the goalie which is under the most pressure for the rest of the season? And you mentioned Hellebuyck for the playoffs, for example, right? We're going to talk about Stuart Skinner. We are going to talk about Jeremy Swayman, Linus Ullmark. Like, you can go down the list. Who is under the most pressure, you think?
Well, that is there's a long list because you talk about Connor Hellebuyck last year against Colorado. They win game 1 and then he gave up, so many goals and then they lost 4 in a row. I think Logan Thompson is under a lot of pressure in Washington because he's having such a fantastic regular season. But they're splitting. Logan Thompson, Charlie Lindgren, and it's kind of a 50-50 split. When you get to the playoffs, they're going to pick one goalie, and I think that's going to be Logan Thompson. And if he doesn't play well, then, it's going to be a wasted season in Washington. So I think Logan Thompson may have not a lot of pressure right now, but when you get to the playoffs, he's going to have a ton of pressure because of having to perform and having to play almost every game.
In our regular podcast, we had talks about Connor Hellebuyck. Is he the right goalie for the playoffs? Because even if in the Four Nations matchup, when he was in the net against Binnington in a greatest match of, I would say, 10 years in the national scene, he was doing, in my opinion, a little mistakes, and Binnington looked much more calm in that, and maybe he was, believing in himself a little bit more. What is your opinion on that?
Well, Binnington is a big game type of goaltender. I didn't think Binnington had a good tournament until the third period and the overtime against Team USA. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, that's what he does. That's Jordan Binnington. I think Connor Hellebuyck was very consistent. The win against Finland, the win against Canada. He didn't play against Sweden, but he was consistent. Even if he gave up maybe a bad goal to Joki Arju, right, in the Finland game. It was not a good goal, but I think he was consistent. So in the playoffs, you don't get 80 games. You get maybe 4 or 5. Like, being consistent over 80 games is great, but can you be really, really at your best for 5, 6, 7 games and then do it again and then do it again. That's what we haven't seen out of Hellebuyck yet. Like the Winnipeg Jets have been, for a lot of expert, like Stanley Cup favorites over the last few years, but they never got there. So I need the Hellebuyck to steal a series. That's what I need him to do.
Well, what you mentioned is actually important. Like you do it once and then you have to do it 4 times to win the cup, right? That's the most difficult thing about it. I actually wanted to touch on Binnington as well a little bit. You mentioned it. I heard you talking about him on TSN before the tournament when he was selected to be the starter for the tourney. And I had a similar sentiment about it, let's say, or viewpoint, because after the first USA-Canada game, I would have probably gone to Adin Hill. And I was a little bit skeptical of Binnington's play. He proved me wrong. He proved everybody wrong. And props to John Cooper with sticking with him. But, how would you describe Jordan Binnington being the big game player?
Well, I think that's why John Cooper has won 2 Stanley Cups, and he went to 3 Stanley Cups, right? And he's one of the best coach in the world, because he made a decision and he knew why he was making that decision. And I have not liked Jordan Binnington this season. I thought last year he was really good. This year, Joel Ofer, the backup goaltender, actually has better numbers. So I'm looking at Jordan Binnington. I'm like, it's not been great, but that's what he will do. And right now, St. Louis is back in the race. They're back in the race in the Western Conference. Why? Because of Jordan Binnington. Because when he came back for the Four Nations face-off, he was excellent. And they had some big wins. They beat Washington. They had big wins. So who am I to, say bad things about a Stanley Cup winning goaltender and the Four Nations face-off winning goaltender? And now he may put his team. So I would have picked Adin Hill, like you said, but it worked for John Cooper, and that's why he's one of the best coach.
Right now, if you look at Canada, I mean, you're a proud Canadian from Buffalo still. What do you think about Canadian goalies in general at the moment? You still remember the times of Patrick Roy, Martin Brodeur. What about NHL goalies or Canadian goalies in general right now? Isn't it a little bit downgrade at the moment? Because I look at it like this. I think it's a little bit downgrade from what it used to be.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, we had Carey Price, maybe the last Canadian goaltender to be a dominant goalie in the National Hockey League. We still have Marc-Andre Fleury, who at 40 years old is doing good. But where's the 25-year-old goalie, 27-year-old goalie that is the best in the world? It's not coming from Canada anymore. Now, I have a theory on that. I think that Canadian major junior goalies don't have enough time to develop. They're 17 and 18. They're asked to play. And if they don't play well, then poof, you push them aside. And when they're 20, they don't have anywhere to play. Because they played Canadian Major Junior, they have to go pro. And they're not ready for pro. So I think that, and I know you guys follow hockey a lot, now major junior players will be able to go to U.S. American universities. And I think that's going to help Canadian goalies, because they'll play major junior and then maybe they'll go to universities and then they'll go to pro. You're going to give them more time to develop and to learn. That's why Europe is so good. Europe, you play juniors, then you play second league, and then you play top league, and then you come over to the US and the NHL, and you're 25 years old, you have a lot of experience, and you can play. I think Canada is behind because they don't have the same development structure than the Americans, the Finns, the Swedes, the Russians, the Czech, the Slovaks. It's not the same in Canada right now, and that's why it has to change.
in 1 year, sorry, I will just quickly do the one follow-up. In 1 or 2 years, also the CHL banned European goalies to be in the league. Do you think it was the right decision, or they wanted to make more room for Canadian goalies? But right now, I think it's back. You can go to...
you can have European goalies in the CHL, but you're right. I think it was something they tried because they have limited options to try to develop their own goaltenders. The problem with Canadian major juniors is it's a business. There's a lot of money and you got to win. And so are you going to have a 17-year-old goalie that you want to develop, that you want him to get drafted in the NHL, and maybe it's not going to be as many wins, or are you going to have a 20-year-old goalie that you're going to play almost every night? That's why there's, they tried something, but it didn't work. You just need to give them more time to develop.
I just wanted to add a side comment when Marty mentioned the colleges. Jakub Dobeš, who is on the Canadians right now. It's a little bit unusual route for Czech goalkeepers to go through, but he went to NCAA and now he's on the Canadians, right? So
so Dobeš is a little bit unique in that, but that's another option, right? And the fact that he had time to develop. You see a lot of European goalies play in the USHL, in the North American Hockey League in the US. So because that's an option to them. I mean, Victor, you have a picture of Ryan Miller behind you. A lot of pictures of Ryan Miller.
Don't worry, you are also here.
I know that's Ryan Miller. But I see Millsy, and that's perfect. Millsy was fantastic, but Millsy had the time to develop at Michigan State. He played junior, and then he went to Michigan State, and then he was in Rochester, and he had time to develop. Give the goalies time to develop. Vasilevsky had time to develop. Shesterkin had time to develop. Hellebuck had time to develop. Like all the best goalies took their time to get there.
Hey, just one quick question: who is going to be Canada's starter for the Olympics? Binnington or maybe Thompson?
It's too early. Look, if Logan Thompson goes out and wins a Stanley Cup or goes to the finals, then you have to consider him, right? Because he will have played in a pressure situation. I think that's the biggest question mark for Team Canada. Their forwards are going to be great. McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby. You probably will have Celebrini or Connor Bedard, Braden Point. You got so many good forwards. On the defense, you have Kel McCarr. You have Devon Tays. You have Josh Morrissey. You have Parayko, who played really good. You have so many good defensemen for Canada. You still don't know who your number one goalie will be in a year from now at the Olympics.
You also mentioned the big goalies and the athletic goalies. It's a trend, I would say, right now. You have Dustin Wolf at the one end, Vasilevsky, the big goalies at the other end, but still they are kind of athletic. What do you prefer? Do you like to see more? It's same in Buffalo right now. You have UPL, who is a big guy, and Devon Levi, who is a pretty, speedy goalie. So what do you prefer at the moment right now?
I prefer a goalie that stops the puck. And it doesn't really matter to me if you're big or small, but I'll tell you this. There's a lot of big goalies that rely too much on their size. Like, you have to be able to watch the puck. You have to be a good mover. You have to have good posture. Like, Luukkonen, for one example, he's still working, but there's times where I think, he has to be shoulders back. He has to, because he's a big goalie that sometimes looks small, and there's small goalies that sometimes look big. Dustin Wolf is a small goalie, but he can look big. UC Soros, he's having a terrible year this year. He's a small goalie that sometimes look big. So I say, if you are small, you obviously are going to have to be much faster, much more athletic, much more of an elite type goaltender. If you're big, you have more advantages. But I can look at a big goalie and say, no thank you. And I can look at a small goalie and say, yes. You have to watch him. It's not about stats. It's not about, goals save above expectations and all of that. It's about watching how they play the game.
How does the thing change? Like 20 years ago, you were, one of the top goalies in NHL. How the goaltender thing changed during the years? Because also the game changed. It's much
the
quicker.
Equipment changed, the game changed. They're in the closet, but I have the pads from my very first NHL win. And my son was in town and he picked them up. He goes, how did you play with this? Like the equipment changes. So like a goalie, like Marc-Andre Fleury has had to adjust to the change of the game, the change of the equipment, the change of the positioning, right? So I say you always have to learn new tricks. Now, I think we're pretty good. There's not a lot of newer techniques that are coming in. Like the reverse VH, everybody understands the reverse VH. Everybody knows the positioning, the movement. Some goalies are still paddle down. I don't know about the paddle down. I like a goalie that seals the ice with the pads. But I think we're in a steady time right now. So goalies are not going to be 6'10". Like I think that we're going to see 6'4" to 6'6" goaltenders, but in my days it was 6 foot to 6'2". So we've gotten bigger, but I don't think we're going to see 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" goaltenders just all of a sudden take over. I think we're in a steady period right now, and I think we're going to be like that for probably the next 15 years.
So let's talk about Buffalo, actually. That's,
I didn't want to come with that, the people hear only about Buffalo from me.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I did want to talk about Jiri Kulik because, it's interesting, actually. His development is well under focus, under the microscope here in the Czech Republic. So what, in your eyes, what helped him to make the team this year? Where did he improve?
Well, he's got a great shot and he can score, right? And that's what you want in the National Hockey League. You want guys that can score and guys that can give you offense. What I think has been great, the opportunity for Jiri, is that there's been kind of I don't want to call it disappointment, but that the center position, like Tage Thompson got injured. Dylan Cousins isn't performing the same way you would want him to. Ryan McLeod is not a number one center. He's really good, but he's not a number one center. So if you're Jiri Kulik, the positioning opened up, right? And he was given an opportunity to play with Peterka and Thompson, and he performed really, really well. Now, he's young. He's 20 years old. It's come back down a little bit. Plus, he took a puck to the face. Now he's got to play with the visor and the bubble. It's a lot. But what I've seen out of Kulik in Rochester and now in Buffalo, I think he's going to be a fantastic hockey player. Does he have to work on his game? Yes. I think he's got to get a little tougher. And when I say tougher, I don't say get in a fight or throw big hits. I say winning one-on-one puck battles on the wall. But if you're a center, you don't get to the wall often. You're not playing on the wall. You're playing in the middle of the ice. But you have to fight to get to the middle of the ice. So I think that's the one thing he's got to continue working on. But he's so young and he's so talented that I have no problem to think he's going to be a really, really good player in the National Hockey League.
There were some things on Twitter, on X, on other social medias that were telling us that Jason Zucker has played a really big role in Jiri Kulik development. Do you know something more about it, or you don't?
Well, yeah. So there was a funny story, and we asked Jiri about it. So I was in the trainer's room where they get their sticks and whatever, and Jiri came over to one of the trainers, the equipment guys, and he said, "Hey, can I get a new stick?" And Zucker was like, "No, you can't get a stick." And Yuri was like, but you told me I need to get, if my stick is not perfect, I need to get a new stick. Because Zucker had a story about playing in Minnesota and his stick broke and the veterans were giving him a hard time. So Zucker said to Yuri, yeah, when you play on my line, you can get a new stick, but you're not on my line right now. You can't get a new stick. You're a rookie. And I think that's why Zucker has been so good, because Zucker is fun. Zucker is funny. Zucker loosens it up, but Zucker also plays a hard game. So I think he's been really good for Yuri to keep him, loose and to keep him having fun. But Yuri did get a new stick, so it was all good.
Maybe we can switch from Jiří Kulich to other Czech goaltenders. Right now, Lukáš Dostal, I would say, is the number one Czech guy, but also there's a name called Karel Vejmelka. I'm not trying to get it in an English way. Karel Vejmelka, as we said it in Czech.
That's how you guys do. So we say Karel Vejmelka, but Karel Vejmelka, I like that better.
You also say that you say Kulik. It's Kulich. You also say this one.
We did ask Yuri that. We said, Yuri, because when at first we said Kulik, and then we said, Yuri, what do you want? And he says, Kulik is fine. So now we're like, okay, so now it's Yuri Kulik, but it always changed, right? It's like, in Buffalo we had Talander and Talinder. We had Sekra. Like it changes all the time.
You know what? The theory is like they don't want to bother you with the Czech pronunciation because there are two sounds actually which you cannot make in English. So they say whatever you do in English, and that's okay.
It's the same thing in French. Like when I came up, it was Martinem Bironem. But I'm like, it's Marty Biron. It's like, it's fine. I don't worry about it.
But you know what? I have one inside Czech thing for you. Kulik actually means toque, right? So like a
toque.
hat. Yeah. Okay, so when they throw hats for hat tricks, it's like kulik, right? So we make fun of that in Czech, right? Because they're throwing hats, they are throwing kuliks.
I will write that down and I'll make sure I remember that.
Well, back to the Czech goalies. Dostal and Vejmelka right now, I would say, are the best Czech goalies right now in the league, but we have 9 goalies that played at least one game in the NHL this year. That's far more than we have defenders right now in the NHL.
Yeah.
So
that's Czech record, actually.
Yeah. So
9 goalies is a Czech record?
In 1 year, yes.
Okay, wow. Okay, I did not know that, so that's great. You guys are giving me really good stuff to use on TV and stuff in the future, so that's great.
I'll say my account number and you can do something for me.
But so, okay, I think there's some really good Czech goalies in the National Hockey League. Even Dan Vladar, I think, in Calgary as a backup, he had a fantastic game the last game he played. I think that's good. Jakub Dobeš has been really good and a great story in Montreal. But you're right, Lukas Dostal, for me, like Anaheim now has a really good number one goalie. Over the years, it was John Gibson, and Gibson had some ups and downs and some injuries. And I think they probably can trade John Gibson now because they obviously, have Dostal, and Dostal has been one of the best goalie in the league this year. So I've really liked him. I like the way that he plays. He's a little bit more like Connor Hellebuck, more positioning, not the big white butterfly, just a little bit more compact, but very efficient. So I think Dostal has been a really, really good story this year.
I actually checked in the morning the goals saved above expected and according to MoneyPack, Lukáš is 3rd in the league right now, and Karel is 9th in the league right now on the Utah team. Now Karel is going to be in the news a lot. I do believe in the upcoming week because of the trade deadline. Do you think there has been some speculations and rumors about him going to Edmonton? Or him extending his contract in Utah, and they haven't settled that right now, right? So what is your opinion on that? Should he be traded? Should Edmonton go after him?
I think the Oilers are going to look at a couple of different options if they make a trade. Maybe it's Binnington, right? There's been a lot of conversation about Binnington now, but St. Louis is so close to making the playoff. I don't think that you trade Binnington right now. And I think that's the same thing with Utah. I don't think you trade Vejmelka right now because, like, Connor Ingram was the starting goalie at the start of the year. Ingram, like, had some bad games, and Vejmelka has been really, really good. And everybody, I know their coach Turingi in Utah, and he loves Vejmelka. He loves the way that the person that he is, the way that he plays. So I don't think they're going to trade him. I think they're going to keep him and hope that they maybe can get in the playoffs in the first year in Utah. So I think John Gibson maybe to Edmonton, but that's if Edmonton wants to make a move. I don't know that the Oilers are going to do it.
Well, you are preparing yourself, I guess, for TSN trade deadline day, I guess. What teams are looking for goalies right now?
Well, right now, I think the Edmonton Oilers are one. Who was I talking about? I had a team the other day that I was saying, Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh is going to look for a goalie, but Pittsburgh is not for this year. Pittsburgh is for the future. And like when I mentioned John Gibson is from Pittsburgh. And I think if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins and you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson and Rickard Rakell and Brian Rust, you need a goalie. Right now, goaltending is not doing good in Pittsburgh. So would you trade for John Gibson because he's from Pittsburgh and then he has 2 more years left in his contract? So maybe that's a team that either now at the deadline or in the summertime is going to trade for a goalie. But other than that, the Edmonton Oilers are one, and I think that's about it. That's why the goalie market, it's always exciting. These goalies are going to get traded, and then nothing happens. That's always like that.
So what are the Penguins what are they going to do with the Tristan Jarry's contract? Is he going to get traded? Is he going to get buried in the minors?
He may get bought out, right? I think that right now he's playing in the minors because they're like, okay, he's fine. But maybe after the season, they can buy him out. Maybe they can trade him and
is there a chance
salary.
that is going to pick him up during the deadline?
No, I don't think so. I don't think Tristan Jarry's getting picked up. I don't think Philip Grubauer's getting picked up. That's another one that's in the minors right now with Seattle. I just don't see it happening. It's unfortunate for the person, for Tristan Jarry and Grubauer. I mean, because they're making a lot of money and not performing, you're being sent to the minors. Well, that's part of life in the NHL.
I will add one more team to the mix, the Canadian team, Vancouver Canucks, because they extended Lankinen, they have Katcher Demko, and they still have Artur Shilovs, who proved in the former playoffs that he wants to be in the NHL mix too. So are they going to do something with their goalies, or do you think they will stick with the Demko, Lankinen, and maybe do 50-50 like games?
I think they're going to stick with Lankinen and hopefully Demko, because Demko has been injured. There's some concerns in Vancouver that, Demko is always hurt. He's always hurt. And he was hurt in college, right? I believe he had double hip surgery in college when he was, before even going to the NHL. So there's a concern. So if you're Vancouver, you can't acquire a goalie to go with Lankinen right now. Shilovs is okay, but he did good last year, but this season it wasn't really good. That's why they got Lankinen. But you have to wait and give Demko a chance. So I think Vancouver is going to look for other things. Vancouver is a mess right now. Vancouver with Elias Pettersson, and they traded JT Miller, and Quinn Hughes was injured. Like, Vancouver is a mess. So I think they have to get help at forward before they have to focus on goalies.
So I guess, Victor, if there's nothing else, really, we can move on to talking about specific goalies, because there is a few we wanted to touch on as well.
Yeah.
And the Czech audience always follows Boston because of pasta. So Jeremy Swayman's saga and the contract, it's been in the news a lot. So what did you make of all of that, right? The signing, the missing the training camp, and his performance this season? And again, what to expect in the future in the crease in Boston?
Okay, well, Boston is not a good team right now. So Jeremy Swayman isn't playing like we know Jeremy Swayman can, but Boston is not the same team that they were 2 years ago or even last year. So this is going to be hard. Look, I don't know why Boston did what they did. First of all, you trade Linus Ullmark and you don't have Jeremy Swayman signed. Like, that was backwards. Make sure you know that you have Jeremy Swayman close to being signed before you trade Linus Ullmark. And then we all knew what the number for Jeremy Swayman was going to be. We all knew it was going to be around $8 million and in that range. And like, the Boston Bruins waited so long to say, oh, okay, we're going to do the number, right? Like 8.25, you're not going to negotiate for $250,000 for 3-4 months. That's a one-day thing. So I think that Boston thought they could get Jeremy Swayman in the 6.5 to 7 million. But everybody knew it's going to be 8 plus. Like, I don't know what they were doing. I think they went in on backwards, and I think it wasted their season. I don't think Boston's going to make the playoffs. I don't think Brad Marchand has played good this year. He had the 2 surgeries over the summer, and he looked good at the Four Nations faceoff, but he's not looked good in Boston. Pasternak's looked good, but that's the only player that's really looked good. I think that they need a lot of work in Boston, and what they did with Swayman and Ullmark this summer, I think it started the crumbling this season. Next year they may be better, but they're going to need to add to the forward groups to help Pasta next year.
I believe the other names on you, Jan.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking we can probably move on to the Rangers, because Shesterkin is one of the best goalies in the league right now. But I have one hard-hitting question for you: is he overpaid?
Yes. No, he's not overpaid. And look, it's a lot of money. It's a lot more than Hellebuck. It's a lot more than everybody else, right? Everybody's in the 8-9 million. Vasilevsky's at 9, like, or close to. So is Shesterkin overpaid? No. Without Shesterkin, the New York Rangers would be like nothing. Like, they are not a good team. They definitely are not a good team defensively. You talk about money puck. The New York Rangers are, 22nd in money puck and expected goals percentage. They are, I think they're 6th worst. Chicago, Montreal, Anaheim, and San Jose are worse than them in expected goals against. They don't defend well, and they need Shesterkin to bail him out every night. So, do I think he's overpaid? No. Do I think that it hurts a team when you put that much money into one goaltender? Yes. But he's worth all the money, because without him, the Rangers would not be even close to a playoff spot.
All right. Victor, if you have other names, you can jump in. I also wanted to touch on Stuart Skinner, right? And we already mentioned that, right? Is he the one that can lead the Oilers to the promised land? Or it's like every day you don't know what you're going to get. Is it the Game 7 Stanley Cup Finals goalie? Or is it like 850 save percentage guy?
Yeah, and even Game 7 Stanley Cup Final, well, he didn't win that game, right? So, excuse me, you're looking at it and you're like, you need somebody that's going to win you the big game. And Stuart Skinner, for me, very inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get. and he's very jittery. Like the puck is coming and his hands are moving, and he's always like breathe by it through the nose, out through the mouth, do some yoga, do some meditation, like relax. You know, you never see Shesterkin like just jittery. He's active, yes, but he's always under control. Vasilevsky is the same way. Hellebuck is about the most relaxed goalie in the league. But Stuart Skinner, it's like he's having 5 Red Bulls and he can't control himself. Like to me, that's the problem.
Well, isn't it a little bit like Devon Levi if I will go to Buffalo? He's doing all the meditation, all the stuff, but in net, he looks a little bit
exactly,
like...
yeah.
Yeah, but that's my one thing with Levi, that, look, at the college level, he was able to overcome it. At the American League level, he's able to overcome it. But at the NHL level, that's a whole other thing. Like, he needs to like calm down a little bit, not be so jittery. And maybe he's going to, prove me wrong. Maybe he'll become a great NHL goalie and very jittery. But I still think like UC Saros is very active, but his feet don't always move. And right now, Stuart Skinner's feet always move, and Devon Levi's feet always move. And I say, take a chill pill here. Let's relax a little bit.
All right. Potentially one last goaltender from my side, or a couple of them actually. Who is going to be the starter for Toronto in the playoffs? And again, who is under more pressure? Is it Stolarz? Does he have anything to lose? Or is it Joseph Woll who needs to prove himself, right? So who's going to be the starter?
Well, I think both of them have played well this year, but Anthony Stolarz has played better. And Anthony Stolarz, despite the fact that he didn't play with Florida in the playoffs last year, he experienced what it's like to win a Stanley Cup. And he saw Sergei Bobrovsky be really good. So I think Anthony Stolarz is going to be the starter in Toronto. But they have Joseph Woll that could help, that could be there. So I think Toronto is a team right now that is totally different than the last few years. Number one, they're way better defensively. They're a top 7 or top 6 defensive team in the National Hockey League. They have a really good goalie tandem. Their team save percentage is top 5. Last year, they were 25th. Like, I get it. Last year, you had Woll and Samsonov, but it's not. Anthony Stolarz is better. So I think Toronto is a different team, but I would go with Anthony Stolarz as my starter right now if the playoffs were starting this week.
And so would you put your money down on them advancing to the second round, third round?
Yes. And the reason why is because I think that in the Atlantic Division, Tampa is not the same team that they once were. Now they still have Kucherov and Point and Vasilevsky and Hedman, but I think Toronto is better. And Florida, if Matthew Tkachuk is at 100%, they don't have the same defense as last year. Bobrovsky is not playing the way that he did last year. So I think they're better. The one team that's surprising right now is Detroit. When Detroit made the coach change, they've been one of the best team in the National Hockey League. But I still think Toronto's better. So I'm going to say Toronto's the better team in the Atlantic Division. I think they would get at least to the second round and potentially to the conference final.
Tak to byla první část rozhovoru s Martinem Bironem. Pokud chcete vidět i druhou část, musíte na herohero.co a tam se najít bomby k tyči. S Martinem tam rozebíráme jeho kariéru, jaké to bylo dělat backupa Haškovi, Millerovi či Lundqvistovi, jak se mu líbilo v New Yorku, jaké bylo třeba hrát s Václavem Prospalem, aktuálně trenérem u Rochesteru Americans, organizace pod Buffalem, a jaký Prospal byl hráč a jestli je třeba trošičku podobný jako John Tortorella. To všechno Martyho kariéra v druhé části rozhovoru na herohero.co/bomby k tyči.